Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Ivy English. I'm Karen.
And I'm Chris Gorski.
Today is April 14th, and we're on page 39 in your magazines. And today, we're going to cover part 2 of the article that we started yesterday, entitled An Undersea Adventure with Captain Nemo.
So yesterday we talked about the background of the story here, and we'll wrap it up today and then learn a bit more about the author, Jules Verne. Yesterday, we had our team go out on the sea and look for this sea creature that has been destroying ships. They find the creature and they harpoon it, which means to stick it with a spear or a kind of long dart. And instead of the creature running away, it actually attacks them, sinks their ship, and they discover that, in fact, it's not a sea creature, but a futuristic submarine. They meet Captain Nemo, which means no one. He's this mysterious figure. Some are excited to be on the submarine exploring the depths of the oceans, while others prefer to get on land. And, well, let's see what happens next.
So right now, our hero is desperate to get off the submarine, and he's trying to find a way to do it. He is obsessed with the idea of finding a way to escape. So here's part 2. At first, Nemo seems like a reasonable person, but his behavior deteriorates over time. The country that killed Nemo's family assaults the submarine, and this drives him over the edge and he goes insane. Nemo ignores Aronnax's pleas for mercy and cruelly sinks the enemy ship to get revenge. Afterward, Nemo isolates himself from the others. Land decides that this is the perfect time to try to escape. Aronnax decides to go check on Nemo one last time before they leave. He watches Nemo from a distance and realizes that he's a broken man. Shortly after, Aronnax, Land, and the others escape the submarine and wash ashore on a small island. At the novel's conclusion, Aronnax hopes that Nemo will somehow be able to let go of his anger towards mankind and recover.
20,000 Leagues Under the Sea was written by Jules Verne, who many consider to be the father of modern science fiction writing. It's reported that Verne based the inquisitive and scientifically minded character of Dr. Aronnax upon himself. An interesting theme of the novel is the relationship between the future and the past. On one hand, Nemo and his crew are traveling on the most futuristic submarine in the world. On the other hand, their minds are still rooted in the past. Verne even makes a point of mentioning that Nemo doesn't have any modern books in his immense library.
The concepts of separation and exile are also prominent in the book. Living on a submarine, Nemo has managed to distance himself from people both physically and spiritually. He starts to feel as if he has broken ties with humanity. In the end, Nemo winds up emotionally destroyed. This suggests that it's impossible for humans to be content in isolation without a connection to others. Nobody will argue with that one.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, let's go back to the beginning. At first, Nemo seems like a reasonable person, but his behavior deteriorates over time. Now, this is again a big parallel with Moby Dick, because Captain Ahab is a strong and very determined man, but he is so obsessed with getting Moby Dick. In the end, he is not being reasonable anymore. He takes ridiculous risks, and he's just doing it out of vengeance. He's not going to get anything from it. He just wants his revenge. And at that point, your mind is no longer functioning well.
When was Moby Dick written? Are you?
It's also 19th century. I don't remember the exact date.
It's a similar time period. I wish I knew offhand when it was written, because there are a number of parallels that you keep bringing up, and I agree with all of them.
And I read the whole book.
Oh.
I did it as a matter of pride. It's a very, very thick book. And when people talk about, what classics you've read, there was a period of time some years ago, I was just going through them, like Dostoevsky, and then Moby Dick, and then this and that. And I took on Moby Dick. Oh, Tolstoy. I read a lot of Tolstoy.
Oh, yeah. The unabridged versions?
Yes.
Those are colossal books.
Yes, but I mostly listened to them as audiobooks, and I listened while I was hiking. So it went down very easily, and you realize they really deserve their ranking as, especially in the case of Tolstoy, is the best novel in the world. It's amazing. So for me, audiobooks, if you can understand the language well enough to just listen to it, It's a great way to get through books. So I got through the whole thing with Moby Dick. And the ending, I have to say, is quite disappointing because he just wraps it up really quickly. They get caught up in a swirl in the ocean and they all die. And that's the end, except for the narrator. But it's all about revenge. And he devotes his whole life to getting revenge. And what did he get from it? He died. So this one actually, they're hoping will have a better ending. We'll come to that at the end. So we can see now that obsession is not a healthy thing. It may cause your mental health to deteriorate, and then you will start behaving erratically. Erratically means unpredictably, and that's spelled E-R-R-A-T-I-C-A-L-L-Y. When you behave erratically, nobody can predict what you're going to do, and it can be dangerous. Okay, next sentence. The country that killed Nemo's family assaults the submarine, and this drives him over the edge, and he goes insane. So his mental health was already suffering. He was already not quite there mentally. So then this terrible crisis happens. The country that killed Nemo's family now attacks the submarine with these people in it, and he loses it. In English, we now say he loses it. That means you no longer are thinking straight. You've lost control. It's going to be hard to work with you because you're not behaving normally. So it drives him over the edge. That means it pushes him too far. And then he really does lose his mind. He goes insane.
An assault is an attack. And when somebody is driven over the edge, literally think of a car driving off a cliff. Think you're driving around Hualien or something. And you drive off a cliff. You can't go back. There's no going back to it. That's right. You're going to fall down like Wile E. Coyote, right?
That's right, but you don't come back. Okay, next sentence. Nemo ignores Aronnax's pleas for mercy and cruelly sinks the enemy ship to get revenge. Now, I can understand him doing that.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, if you've been attacked, you attack back. So he's very angry, and then he sinks the ship. It's amazing that he was still able to do that.
So mercy is an old Latin word that actually means to reward. It's a prize. And then later it was translated into Old French, which meant to pity, which is more like the idea we think of today. When someone is to offer mercy, that means to be kind to them, to either not kill them, let them live, or to maybe perhaps give them money or something to help keep them safe.
And that's the origin of the French word for thank you. Merci.
Right, exactly. Perfect.
Yeah.
Now, revenge is to kind of get back at somebody, but you do this out of a cruel and angry way. You probably know the Marvel movie, The Avengers, which is a very closely related word. But when you avenge someone and not get revenge, this means you're right to do it. So when we're using the word revenge here, we kind of think Nemo is strictly angry, not thinking, yes, this is the correct thing to do.
That's right. You just get back at somebody to hurt them just because you're mad and you're hurt. Next sentence. Afterward, Nemo isolates himself from the others. To isolate yourself from somebody, that means to stay away from them and you stay all by yourself. You don't interact with other people. Land decides that this is the perfect time to try to escape. So it's a time of huge crisis. And Land is thinking maybe with things in such a mess, I might be able to get away from here. Get off this submarine and back onto dry land again.
While Nemo is hiding, here's a good chance for us to get off. He won't let us go, but maybe we can go because he's choosing to stay in his room by himself.
Aronnax decides to go check on Nemo one last time before they leave. So actually, he's still got some tender feelings or some mercy in his heart for Nemo in spite of how miserable he is being stuck on that submarine. So he goes to see, I wonder what's going on with this guy right now. And then he goes and looks in on him. He watches Nemo from a distance and realizes that he's a broken man. And as soon as we see that, I think that it sort of plays our heartstrings. If we say, oh, he's a broken man, then you think that you can't use full strength to attack him now because he is not strong enough to fight back.
I had difficulty. I was trying to think of an easy way of saying somebody is a broken man and to accurately describe. The best I came up with, this is a person that's no longer genuinely able to do good or really do anything positive in the world. This is a person that is now in a very dark and unhappy place. It's a very deep depression.
You have broken their will.
Yeah.
They no longer have the will or desire or motivation to do probably anything. Shortly after, Aronnax land and the others escape the submarine and wash ashore on a small island. So now they have finally escaped. And where are they now? It's a small island. They have washed ashore. That means they found some way to get across however distant the island was, to get through the water and make a landing on the island. So at the novel's conclusion, Aronnax hopes that Nemo will somehow be able to let go of his anger towards mankind and recover. So he is really an optimistic person.
Yeah, Dr. Aronnax really has a lot of good faith. Some people have interpreted this that he in some way is a little naive, perhaps, that he's a little simple, that he doesn't see Captain Nemo for the very dangerous person that he is. That, yeah, while there may be a lot of good in him, he's also conclusively a murderer. There's no denying that.
Yeah.
And generally speaking, if you're a murderer, you're pretty much by definition a kind of a bad person, even if you do a lot of other good things. Like nobody talks about the good things Hitler did.
But that makes a good point, and that is we love to see things in black and white,
Right.
but none of us are black and white.
Yeah, I think so. We are all complicated people.
Exactly, and Nemo is very much a complicated man.
Now, it's at this point that we would actually see in the movie version of this story, there's like a boat that carries bananas. And this, interestingly, I learned is quite a taboo. And I needed to know more about this. So I actually went out of my way to learn about this. And so if I may just share this somewhat related story. So bananas would seem to be a great thing to carry on boats because they're easy to carry, they're easy to store, but they actually are considered very, very unlucky.
That's funny. It makes me think of Jamaica and Harry Belafonte.
Yeah, exactly, right? Bananas need to move, right?
Yeah.
So here's why. So there are a couple theories. When a heavy ship would sink, everything would tend to go in the water all the way down, except bananas, which float.
Really?
So one of the only things of evidence you would have that a ship sank were a bunch of bananas floating in the ocean somewhere.
So the enemy would see you.
And just say, well, here's some bananas. So probably the ship went down here, and so maybe the bananas were like cursed magic. They can sink, but you can't. Huh. Another way was that snakes, spiders, and all sorts of scary things would live inside the bananas, and if you're moving the bananas, they would bite you and kill you. And then lastly, one other reason is bananas produce ethylene gas.
Actually, that's what ripens them so quickly. If you put any other fruit or vegetable by it, that's going to get ripened fast too.
You are exactly on the point. So here's what would happen. They would be carrying other things that are worth more money, but those would spoil faster because of the ethylene gas. They couldn't make any money on it. And then their own food and supplies would spoil. So pretty much the only thing these sailors could eat for a period of time were these bananas. And
Rotten bananas.
And they would get sick of them and hate them. And it just became a thing that sailors never wanted on their boat. So to see this in the movie is a little bit of an unusual situation because, there were no real true sailors on the set while making the movie.
Actually, I feel that way about bananas too. They do ripen really fast, and it's so easy to grab a banana when you don't have time to cook, and I get really sick of bananas. So then I'll have a dry period, a long time when I don't have bananas, and I'll think, gee, I haven't had bananas for a while. The first 3 are great because they're nice and yellow and at the right stage of ripeness, and then they ripen too fast.
Yeah, I have a banana almost every day. It's just at the end of work after class, I have like food every 2 hours like I'm a baby.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, and then a banana is my end-of-night food just because it's right there, no work, pack my bag and go.
Good nutrition, tastes good. Yeah, I agree totally. Okay, our next paragraph.
20,000 Leagues Under the Sea was written by Jules Verne, whom many consider to be the father of modern science fiction writing.
Okay, and we discussed that a long time ago in that article that Chris mentioned earlier. So he had all of these really futuristic, fantastic ideas, and so many people consider Jules Verne the father of science fiction. This genre of writing. Genre is G-E-N-R-E. G-E-N-R-E, it's a French word. It just means a classification, a kind of writing. It's one of the few words in English that starts with the je because it's from French, genre. There were, however, earlier examples of science fiction writing. There's one called The Man in the Moon. It's from like the 17th century. So it was not the first, but of modern science fiction writing, yeah, maybe I think it's okay. It's a fair statement.
Don't forget this word league does not mean like Justice League, the group. League is an Italian word that means to bind or hold together. That's not what we're talking about here. Remember, this is a term about distance, how far away you are. It's about 3 miles. So 20,000 leagues is 60,000 miles, 96,000 kilometers. It's reported that Verne based the inquisitive and scientifically minded character of Dr. Aronnax upon himself.
I find the use of that adjective really interesting, that they put inquisitive here. If you're inquisitive, you like to ask questions. You can see part of the word question in quiz. It's the same root. So if you're very inquisitive, you're asking about everything, just like little children. Mommy, why is the sky blue? Why is the grass green? They just keep on asking and asking and asking. That's somebody who's inquisitive. But this is an inquisitive character who just wants to know the why about everything. And he does not just ask and take any old answer. He's scientifically minded, so he wants a solid answer based in science.
This makes a lot of sense why Dr. Aronnax would prefer to stay on the submarine for a period of time as opposed to Ned Land, who's just strictly a hunter. He's like, this is not a good situation. Let's get out of here and let's get to safety. I don't trust this guy. But Dr. Aronnax is like, wow, there's this really new technology, and not only is it new technology, it's super advanced because they're not just under the sea, they're darting through the seas that we talked about, which means to move quickly in many directions. So this is, and they're learning about the ocean outside, new creatures, what's life like under the ocean. Dr. Aronnax is a very good fit for Jules Verne, and that really makes sense to me.
Yeah, as I understand, submarines normally don't move fast.
No, these are rather slow-moving vehicles.
That's right.
Nor do they dart.
That's right. So that makes it even more impressive. All right, next sentence.
An interesting theme of the novel is the relationship between the future and the past.
And that's something that I think a lot of Jules Verne's books do to us. We have to imagine what it was like back when he wrote them and how much creativity and original thinking it took to come up with these fantastic ideas that he puts into interesting novels. Compare it with what has really happened in the present and what we imagine for the future.
I know it's kind of like people don't like the idea of pictures in their novels, but I think science fiction is one of the places that it's actually genuinely valuable. What did a futuristic sub look like to Jules Verne? Would he be able to put that image on paper? And yeah, he paints the image with his mind, but we still see it from the context of what does a futuristic sub look to us? What were the materials used? How is it powered? And for me personally, I think that some images of these future technologies would go a very long way to kind of giving us some context into what Jules Verne what was going on in the author's mind.
I would love to see illustrations.
Wouldn't that be fantastic?
For that book. Yes, that would be really interesting.
Let's continue. On one hand, Nemo and his crew are traveling on the most futuristic submarine in the world. On the other hand, their minds are still rooted in the past.
I like that sentence there because I think that's so much of our modern problems. We've got all kinds of great technologies to enable us to do all kinds of things we never even imagined before. But our minds have not caught up. We're still thinking in the old ways, and we're not really taking advantage of these things in ways that I think could really improve our condition.
Yeah, I'm guilty of this too. Oftentimes when I talk with young people, I'm discussing a problem. It's like, well, why don't you just use your phone to fix it? And I'm still thinking of an analog paper world. I just still have my mind pre-smartphone. And there's all these little problems that I can make my life more convenient and make it easier if I were just able to always keep my cell phone in mind.
What I think of is how the internet has connected us all, but we still have these same old problems with arguing, polarization, bullying, all this stuff. You'd think with this technology, which we imagine would bring us all together, we would put more thought and time and energy and research into figuring out how to get along better.
Do you remember when the internet really came along? I suppose...
I do.
Like
Very
96.
1993.
Okay. For me, it was around 96. This is when I was thinking around this time for me. I remember constantly hearing about how the internet would make people smarter, make things more available, and make people more informed about their decisions. And if anything, I would argue that the divisions that existed before have only been enhanced because you're able to retreat away into your own bubble where you only see what you choose to see. And you have not improved, but in many ways, we've regressed in politics in the way people interact with each other.
But I believe that we could improve this if we decided this was our goal. We haven't really set our minds on it. We're still too busy having our petty arguments with each other and saying, you're bad, no, you're bad, and we're not going to get anywhere that way. If we put our good minds to it, I believe we could improve it. Maybe not solve it for all time, but we could definitely improve things if we decided it was important to do. Okay, next sentence.
Vern even makes a point of mentioning that Nemo doesn't have any modern books in his immense library.
Now that one really hit me. How can that be? Like, books are so important in our lives, I guess.
And to be able to build a futuristic sub, this extremely advanced technology. Oh, by the way, I only have books that are like 500 years old.
So there is a big contradiction there.
I agree. I think I also felt this detail was very interesting to me. This is a person that may be stuck in the past. Right. And when somebody is stuck in the past, they're unable to kind of move past the things they're used to in their old life or the way things used to be.
And the things that earned them praise before. You've done this really crazy, wonderful thing, but you get stuck there because you've become a hero and you've stopped trying.
Yeah.
All right, our last paragraph. The concepts of separation and exile are also prominent in the book. Now, that kind of also relates to what we were just talking about people not getting along and then people forming separate bubbles and just making it their goal to put down the other side and try to knock them down.
In separation, we can see PAR, which just means part. They're separated. They're put in little different pieces away from each other. And exile, we can see EX, which of course means outside. So when someone is separated and in exile, they're not close to others.
Living on a submarine, Nemo has managed to distance himself from people both physically and spiritually. And so many of us do this on a regular basis now because we think we can get everything from our computer.
Yeah, spiritual is an interesting word. We were actually talking about that before the show. So spiritual is related to religious, but I would argue that they're not exactly the same. Religion means maybe you join a particular religion. Think of them like a team. But spiritual would be a person that believes in God, but maybe doesn't join a church or a temple.
That's right. But here I think they just mean it emotionally, connecting to other people emotionally. He starts to feel as if he has broken ties with humanity. That really just repeats the idea we've already mentioned, that he no longer feels connected to other people. That does not work with humans. We just can't do that. And with many animals, it does not work at all.
We can often say cut ties instead of broken ties.
In the end, Nemo winds up emotionally destroyed, which is where we can easily end up if we cut ourselves off from other people. This suggests that it's impossible for humans to be content in isolation without a connection to others.
So we have two great words right next to each other, content and in isolation.
And be careful with content, because if you stress it differently, it means something that's inside of something. What is the content of this article or of this jar?
So when we have CON, COL, or COM, it means things are together. But ISO is isolation, meaning all by itself, like the word island. So we have two contrasts, CON and ISO, one meaning together, another meaning apart.
That's right. So if we are in isolation, we cannot be content. The only hope is to try and reconnect with people.
And of course, connection there means tying two people together with a CON, which means together. So don't forget, if you are to pick this book up, don't forget to look into the past, look at pictures, look at paintings, get into the mind of Jules Verne, and it'll give you a better idea of what the world looked like through his eyes.
Or you could just enjoy this book as escapist fiction. That's it for today. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.